Unicorn Overlord is the very first Vanillaware game I have played, and after completing the game, I can assure you all, it won't be the last. Unicorn Overlord was a game where the hours just melted away while playing it. There was so much momentum keeping me playing for one more liberation quest, one more visit to the tavern, one more rapport conversation. From start to finish, I felt enveloped in the strategy, in the world, and in the characters' journeys. Suffice it to say, Unicorn Overlord hooked me and only grudgingly let me go upon defeating the final boss, but with plenty to contemplate for the days after. Unicorn Overlord is a strategy RPG developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlus or Sega depending on region. According to Vanillaware, the development for Unicorn Overlord began back in 2014, but took a backseat to other games including 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. It harkens back to classic 90s RPGs including Ogre Battle along with Vanillaware's signature style. A demo for Unicorn Overlord was released on February 23, 2024 for the game, and the full game released on March 8th for Switch, PS4, PS5, and the Xbox Series. Unfortunately, no PC port was announced, and an Atlus producer later confirmed that there would be no PC port due to an agreement between Atlus and Vanillaware, hence why I got it on Switch instead of waiting fruitlessly. Upon release, the game received positive critical reception and met with commercial success, selling over 500,000 copies in its first month. This is important as Vanillaware stated that they ran out of money during the development of Unicorn Overlord, but then again, Vanillaware always seems to do this with their games. Nevertheless, the million sales number looks likely, making it either the best-selling or the second best-selling Vanillaware game of all time. 13 Sentinels sold over 1 million copies, but took 4 years to reach that point. What then does this genre throwback plus modern convenience and visuals have for prospective players? The game opens with the Queen of Cornia, Elenia, sending her trusted knight Joseph away with her son Elaine as she faces down the rapid advance of the traitorous General Valmor. Valmor's victory in that battle is the start of a campaign that takes over all 5 of Fevrith's countries as Elaine grows up in secret on the island of Palavia. Valmor renames himself as Emperor Galerius of the newly reborn Zenoiran Empire. A decade after that initial takeover, Elaine is now ready to take command of the Liberation, a group of rebels formed by Joseph over the years and now equipped to take the fight to Zenoira. To do so, he will need to recruit many characters, some fellow rebels, some former enemies, and free the countries of Fevrith to reclaim Cornia, his crown, and the continent. Unicorn Overlord is the tropes are tools style of storytelling. It is a tale you've heard many times before of a banished prince returning to reclaim his birthright, the scrappy rebels taking on the fearsome evil empire. Unicorn Overlord tells it well with plenty of memorable characters, mainly on the heroic side, but some villains as well. The countries feel distinct with unique geography and identities to their own credit. Part of this is due to the different races in the world as the land has humans, elves, bestials, and angels populating it. This game feels like a journey, and a fun one at that, and while the surface level good liberation versus evil empire is present, the game does acknowledge the complexity in between. The people who felt they had no choice but to serve the empire to protect or at least to mitigate bloodshed. It's not a particularly complex narrative, but there is plenty of depth and the story kept me hooked the whole time. Obviously, in order to take on an empire, you'll need a large crew of characters ready to fight. There are 2 main ways that you end up recruiting your army members. The first is encountering a quest or mission that has a guest party member join you initially and then join you properly after you win. The second way is as an enemy that you face off against in battle, and then at the end of battle, you have a choice. Will you recruit them or not? Now, the not option has some variety that can be everything from stationing them somewhere else to straight up executing them. You do get a smaller reward for not recruiting, such as an item or accessory, but for the most part that doesn't compare to recruiting them. Personally, I recruited all but 2, and the only reason I didn't recruit those last 2 is because they literally murdered people in cold blood on screen. In my army, that's not going to get rewarded. It is a nice way of forcing the player to reckon with the actions of the characters of the world, their complicity in some of Zenoira's actions, and what forgiveness may be like. I do wish there was more to this system and greater consequences for each choice, but I understand why they chose a simpler system like this. Maybe in a future game they can add more to recruitment and these choices. Battles involve deploying units of several characters. You can get a maximum of 10 units and expand them to include 5 characters per unit. That is a total of 50 characters you can use in a single battle, which may very well be necessary for some of the really big battles towards the end. Each character has a class. There are quite a few classes, so while for some units you'll have a couple options to pick from, for others you'll only get one character of that class the entire game. You can supplement your army with generic characters recruited from forts around the map, so you could conceivably have an all-flying or all-riding army if you wanted, and that does help with those classes that only a single character in your army has. The variety of choices in how you form your army and units gives Unicorn Overlord a lot of room for experimentation. This goes for overall battle, but even during a single battle you have the chance to change your unit's positioning before engaging in a fight, and that can make all the difference between winning and losing. There was definitely more I could have done with experimenting with unit makeup, but I loved changing up who was in the front and back row depending on the enemy we face, and seeing the battle turn on that minor change. Not only that, but which character is the leader of your unit also changes how they move around the map and can assist with other fights going on around them. I can imagine those who love to test out different combinations and character synergies getting sucked into Unicorn Overlord and its amazing set of options for unit makeup. Once you're in a battle, you'll be directing your units to attack enemies and capture various locations. You win the battle usually by either defeating the main boss or capturing the enemy's stronghold. While the battles play out in real time, you'll spend a lot of time paused as you formulate your strategies and make sure everyone is heading for the right place. Do try to keep this in mind or you'll end up with, okay, I swear I directed that unit to attack this position. Where are they? On the entire opposite side of the map? Oh, come on! Well, when they do finally get here to take on the enemy, we enter the battle screen, which is when the game turns into turn-based combat. The characters have action points and passive points marked in either orange or blue, and they will act until they have exhausted each pool, or they can't use any more of their abilities. Once that is finished, the game determines which side won by some calculation. I suspect percentage of health remaining. The loser is knocked back and has to wait to move again. The winner can move immediately and continue on, and if the loser is attacked while waiting, the attacker gets an automatic first strike. Early on, each character will usually have a single active point and passive point and limited abilities with which to use them on, but as characters grow, promote, and accessorize, the options will expand. This is where tactics come in, and you can direct your characters to prioritize certain foes, or in my case, overwrite my healer's entire healing tactics because the rest of the units are dying while you heal that 1 HP my knight lost. You can really make your units efficient with the tactics, and it is an extremely useful tool in your arsenal. Some might even say vital at times. Another big thing to manage are your Valor points. Valor points are necessary for deploying units and using the useful and powerful Valor skills. You gain points by defeating units, seizing locations on the map, and going over the sparkly items to pick them up. There is also an item you can collect in the overworld map called Hollowed Corn Ash that restores 2 Valor points, so I recommend collecting those as much as you can. These also help you restart if you lose a map. The Valor skills are particular to each unit and can do everything from revive allies to various attacks on areas and enemies. One of the most frequently used skills for me was the Heavy Swing ability that would clear obstacles and knock back enemies. Take a look at your options because these skills will serve you very well and the variety is seriously impressive. That's much of the theme of Unicorn Overlord, is giving you a lot of options on how you are going to attack your enemies. The levels themselves have more variety than I was initially expecting, as the game adds in both man-made obstacles such as walls and traps, along with geographic obstacles such as mountains and rivers. They can be bypassed with certain units, and then there are shrines, ballista, and catapults around to add even greater variety and active roles for these things to play. I thought these were a good way to make each level distinct in ways that worked for this real-time hybrid system as opposed to the traditional turn-based combat in other strategy games. I did have to consider the layout of the map when choosing who to deploy where and how to counter the enemy's setup. Outside of battle, you'll be traveling around the land to locate new missions, collect resources, visit towns, and other things. I always recommend doing a thorough exploration around the map because there are landmarks to note, goodies hidden around, and the aforementioned resources. Those resources will be used to rebuild towns and cities you have liberated, and once you do that, the options in those settlements increase. From more items with provisioners and armorers, to stationing guards to gain more money and resources from the local area, and then of course, the tavern in the cities. There is plenty to do in between missions to help your cause. In addition to exploring around, I recommend checking in on the forts to recruit mercenaries or promote units using the honors currency that you earn from battle and fulfilling deliveries to settlements. You can do some mining to gain additional resources and hidden treasures. There's a Colosseum you can challenge for even more rewards, various seals around that you can do practice battles that give experience and help you get units up to speed, and then the tavern, which gives you a chance to increase your rapport with your allies. The rapport conversations are a lot of fun to watch and give you a better idea of the characters. They aren't long, but they are revealing, and you get bonuses for increasing rapport level. Elaine can also romance one of the characters, so try to make sure you've got choices, unless you really know who you want. It's not nearly as deep a social system as you will see in Fire Emblem, but it's part of an engaging set of content beyond battle. I also want to briefly touch on post-game content, as the game has enough to justify talking about it. For those interested in the romance, you can go back after completing the game and change who you choose for those scenes and view it all over again. You can even then complete the final battle to see the ending with that character instead, and that saves those interested a lot of time. There's an expanded Colosseum that is better suited for you to take on in post-game, plus a secret mission. You can also review any scenes already seen via the menus, which is extremely helpful for those of us making videos on the game. It's not too much, but there is some stuff there that makes me appreciate Unicorn Overlord and the developers even more. As for the presentation, visually the game is stunningly gorgeous. The backgrounds have the feeling of medieval paintings that our characters are wandering through. I think the sprites and character designs only make it better with how seamlessly they fit in the world while showing a lot of personality. Then you come to the food, which looks scrumptious and makes me a bit envious at times. A lot of love and thought went into the visuals for Unicorn Overlord, and you love to see it. I was worried about how the Switch might handle the later battles, and those fears were somewhat justified, as the big later battles, especially if there were weather effects like rain, caused slowdowns. Not anything significant that made the game unplayable, but still noticeable. I haven't checked if there is anything similar for other versions of the game. As for the music, I had a great time listening to the various tracks. While the tone is different, I could hear the similarities in composition with another notable game composed by Base Escape founder Hitoshi Sakamoto in Valkyria Chronicles. The voice acting is likewise very solid. Plenty of good performances from a variety of performers, some I was aware of before, others not so much. These were the kind of performances I wish we had gotten for games like Triangle Strategy. It does help that you can actually see the characters' faces and see reactions during dialogue as well. The animation in general helped aid the character development and kept up the energy in scenes as you can see characters emote and move around. I do love me some pixel art, but this is one of the reasons why it is limited. It doesn't have nuanced animation and emotion without character portraits. The UI has a very heavy menu emphasis. The menus themselves are pretty easy to navigate and find information, but then you get to the menus within the menus and it can get overwhelming or intimidating. The game does do some things to make it easier, such as giving optimization options, but it is a lot of time spent organizing things in and out of battle. Just a warning for those who can find that tedious. The game itself is very responsive, and while it doesn't have the precision on console it would on PC, it's still pretty easy to control and make sure your will is done. Just try to remember where your units are, or at least check the minimap. The game also takes advantage of the controls to give lots of options for switching between characters in battle without having to break the flow. The animations in combat naturally though are very slow, especially if you're seeing them for the umpteenth time. Thankfully, there was a speed up option, but I wish we could just set that on by default. It may take some time to adjust to a game like this simply because there aren't a lot of recent games that adopt this gameplay style, but once you do adjust, you'll be sailing free. Unicorn Overlord has a lot to offer for players. A fascinating medieval world populated by many beings, a good group of characters you can get to know better with rapport, a strategy challenge that we haven't seen in a while, and a wonderful presentation that draws you into the world and gameplay. There's a lot of battles to fight and content in between battles as well, so you'll be getting a complete, rich experience, with even a little bit to do after the credits roll for those interested. I think Unicorn Overlord is a special game that a lot of people are going to enjoy, and I would love to see more games like it in the future. For my first foray into Vanillaware's work, I am impressed, and I think many of you will be too. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like on the video, comment below your thoughts, and subscribe to keep up with my videos. I hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day, and happy gaming.